They say men should chase, that it's masculine to pursue, to prove yourself worthy, to beg for attention like a hungry dog. But the truth? A truly masculine man doesn't chase. He vanishes the moment you cross the line. No drama, no closure, just silence. Because his value isn't up for negotiation, and his time isn't something you get to waste twice. This world worships availability. It preys on men who seek validation, who confuse persistence with power. But the men who dominate, the men who live by ancient codes, they don't run after anyone. They stand still like mountains and watch who dares to approach with respect. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Masculine energy is calm, composed, and unshakable. It's not reactive. It doesn't need to chase because it doesn't crave approval. It observes, it evaluates, and when disrespected, it walks away and never looks back. You want to be that man? Stick around, because in this video, I'm going to show you the mindset of men who never beg, never plead, and always walk away with power. And if you're still here, comment this below. Respect me or lose me forever. Let's see who's building that silent strength. Number 1. A man who knows his worth doesn't run after breadcrumbs of validation. He doesn't beg to be seen, to be chosen, to be kept. Why? Because he's already chosen himself. Masculine energy isn't desperate. It's detached. It doesn't move from fear of loss. It moves with awareness of value. A man like that doesn't see disrespect as something to debate. He sees it as a door, and he walks through it without turning back. You see, most men are taught to chase. Movies told you to hold on. Society told you to fight for love. But here's what they don't teach. When you chase someone who doesn't respect you, you're not proving your love. You're proving your powerlessness. You're screaming, "I need you to validate me." That's not masculine. That's emotional slavery. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. Epictetus said, "Seek not the good in external things. Seek it in yourself." That means your center, your grounding, your confidence. It must come from within. The moment you make it about them, you lose the game. Masculine men never play that game. They observe quietly, and the moment they sense disrespect, they do what the weak can't. They disappear. If you're still with me, comment this now. My silence is stronger than your insults. Let's flood the comments with that energy. The kind of energy that never begs, only walks with pride. Number 2. The masculine man understands this brutal truth. When you chase, you signal weakness. You're subconsciously saying, "I am not enough unless you see me." But a man grounded in Stoicism knows the only eyes that matter are his own. He doesn't perform for attention. He doesn't overextend for those who undervalue him. He simply exists with power, and those with the wisdom to recognize it will gravitate toward him. The rest, they get left behind in silence. Disrespect doesn't always come in the form of shouting or insults. Sometimes it's subtle, delayed replies, dismissive energy, half-hearted interest. But the masculine man doesn't argue over breadcrumbs. He doesn't need to raise his voice or demand anything. He simply senses the shift and vanishes. No drama, no goodbye text, just absence. That's his answer. Dark psychology teaches us this. The more available you are, the less you're valued. Humans chase what's scarce, not what's always there. So when a man becomes too present, too reactive, too eager, he becomes easy to ignore. But when he withdraws, that's when curiosity, regret, and longing begin to whisper in the minds of those who disrespected him. His disappearance becomes louder than any argument he could have made. If you're still here and feeling this truth, drop a comment. My absence is louder than your games. Say it, own it, and let's keep moving in strength. Number 3. Most men fear being forgotten. They fear losing access, being ignored, being replaced. But here's the irony. When you chase, you guarantee your own erasure. You become predictable, familiar, replaceable. People value mystery, not desperation, power, not presence. And the man who can vanish without explanation, he becomes unforgettable, not because he tried, but because he didn't. Marcus Aurelius didn't run after the empire's approval. He didn't scream for attention. He ruled by action, and he led with calm. The masculine mind doesn't rush to fix what was broken by disrespect. It doesn't try to explain itself to people who already made a choice to ignore its worth. That kind of man understands this law of power. If they don't see your value, your absence will teach them. And when you disappear, you reclaim control. Your silence becomes a psychological mirror. They're forced to sit with the discomfort of your absence, the what-ifs, the regret, the unknown. That's how a masculine man operates, not through chasing, but by knowing the exact moment to let go without saying a word. If you resonate with that level of calm dominance, comment this: they'll feel my silence more than they felt my presence. Let's keep this energy alive, the energy of men who don't chase, they command. Number 4. The man who disappears when disrespected is not cold-hearted, he is self-respecting. His silence isn't an emotional tantrum, it's a declaration of internal power. He doesn't act out of revenge, he acts from a position of principle, because he understands something most never learn. When you react, you give them control. When you disappear, you take it back. His silence is not weakness, it's evidence that he has nothing left to prove. Not to them, not to the world, not to anyone. You see, the world constantly tells men, chase her, win her back, apologize even when you're right, be available. But when a man internalizes that programming, he becomes emotionally neutered. He loses his edge, he loses his sense of value. He gives his power away, one text, one call, one desperate gesture at a time, until he's nothing more than background noise, and nothing kills desire faster than a man who can't walk away. In dark psychology, this is known as the power of withdrawal, one of the most potent dominance tools in human interaction. When someone insults you and you stay, you're subconsciously validating their behavior. You're saying, I'm okay being treated like this. But when you leave without noise, when you vanish without trying to prove your worth, you flip the frame. You become a mirror, forcing them to face themselves in your absence. And that reflection is far more brutal than any words you could have said. The Stoics taught this long before psychology gave it a name. Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The masculine man rewires that wisdom into action. He doesn't scream, he doesn't beg. He doesn't get drawn into battles of ego. He simply detaches. Not because he's heartless, but because he has discipline over his heart. That's the ultimate emotional maturity, to walk away from what doesn't honor your value, and to do so without a trace of insecurity. Let's be clear, walking away isn't about playing games. It's about refusing to play theirs. It's about choosing yourself over someone who made you a second option. Masculine men don't teach people how to treat them with long monologues. They simply show what happens when they're disrespected. They're gone, and once they're gone, they don't come back. Because self-respect doesn't beg for second chances. If you're feeling this energy, if you're done explaining yourself to people who never deserved you in the first place, then comment this now. I don't react, I rise. Let the weak begin. Let the emotional plead. But we vanish in power. Number 5. Disrespect doesn't require an audience. It doesn't have to be loud to be lethal. Sometimes it hides in the little things, the dry tone, the subtle eye roll, the lack of reciprocity. But a man trained in self-awareness doesn't miss these cues. He doesn't gaslight himself into tolerance. He observes, he processes, and then, without a single warning, he exits. Not for drama, not for attention, but because his standard doesn't allow space for confusion. Only clarity. Modern culture has twisted the idea of masculinity into blind persistence. Don't give up, they say. Keep trying. But here's the truth. Real men don't try for people who have already shown they don't care. They don't fight for crumbs when they bring a full table. They don't explain their value. They embody it. And when it's not met with recognition, they remove themselves like kings exiting a room not worthy of their presence. This is where dark psychology meets Stoic indifference. The mind, trained in both, doesn't get pulled into emotional traps. It lets the silence do the teaching. And in that silence, a shift happens. The one who disrespected you. They start to feel the void. They start to question. And by then, it's too late. Because the masculine man doesn't return. He doesn't reopen doors that were slammed by pride and ego. He closes chapters with dignity, not desperation. And if you're starting to think like this, if you've stopped explaining yourself to those who never deserved your presence, drop this in the comments. If you lose me, I won't remind you why I mattered. Let's fill this space with silent warriors, the kind who disappear like ghosts, but leave impact like thunder. Number 6. Here's what most people never understand. Disappearing isn't weakness, it's dominance. It's one of the most calculated moves a man can make. When a masculine man walks away from disrespect, he doesn't just exit, he alters the energy of the entire room. His silence is like an aftershock. His absence lingers in the air long after he's gone. Because when he leaves, he takes more than just his presence. He takes his power, his peace, and every ounce of respect he brought with him. There's something haunting about a man who doesn't argue, who doesn't explain, who doesn't plead to be understood. It makes people uncomfortable because they can't control him. They can't trap him in emotional games. And that's exactly why the masculine man is so powerful. He doesn't engage in nonsense. He doesn't negotiate with disrespect. He simply leaves. And in doing so, he communicates the one thing that weak men can't. I don't need you. I choose me. In relationships, in business, in brotherhood, weak men cling. They send long texts explaining why they deserve better. They stay in rooms where they're disrespected because they hope things will change. They compromise their own dignity just to feel wanted. But the masculine man? He doesn't crave attention. He doesn't fear distance. He understands that space is a test, and that the person who controls their space controls their life. Stoic philosophy has always been rooted in this concept of self-rule. Marcus Aurelius ruled over the Roman Empire, but his true power came from ruling over himself. He once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy," meaning, don't scream like they scream. Don't chase like they chase. Don't stoop just to be seen. Rise by being unmoved. A masculine man doesn't mirror chaos. He exposes it through his calm. Now here's where dark psychology meets Stoic control. In psychological warfare, withholding is one of the most effective tactics. When someone expects your reaction and you give them nothing, their mind spirals. They search for answers, they overanalyze, they replay the moment. Why did he leave so easily? Why didn't he say anything? Was I not important? That silence becomes a storm in their mind. And you remain untouchable. Because the truth is, silence is not emptiness. It's strategy. It's power. It's saying, I know my worth and I refuse to argue about it. And when you withdraw from someone who played with your value, you do more than disappear. You elevate. You show that your peace isn't for sale, your presence isn't a charity, your energy isn't on discount. Disappearing doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're whole enough to walk away. It means your emotions don't control you. Your environment doesn't dictate you. You don't scream to be heard. You don't beg to be chosen. You simply vanish and let the silence speak louder than your words ever could. And listen closely to this. The world respects those who don't explain themselves. People may not admit it, but deep down they crave the presence of someone who doesn't chase, someone who doesn't plead, someone who knows exactly when to walk and never look back. Because in a world full of noise, the man who disappears becomes the loudest echo of all. If you're becoming that man, the man who commands respect through silence, who doesn't settle for half love, who doesn't cling to comfort, then this is your declaration. Drop it in the comments right now. I vanish with dignity. I never beg for space. Let them chase your shadow. Let them miss what they once ignored. But never, ever let them make you forget your worth. Number 7. The masculine man understands one law above all. Where there is no respect, there can be no presence. He doesn't negotiate that truth. He doesn't twist it to suit his emotions. He lives by it, ruthlessly, consistently. And that's what makes him rare. Because in today's world, people are addicted to validation, addicted to being liked, wanted, seen. But he isn't. He's addicted to self-control, to peace, to knowing that wherever he is, it's because he's valued, not tolerated. There is a quiet strength in a man who doesn't react to insult, mockery, or emotional manipulation. Instead of raising his voice, he raises his standards. Instead of clinging, he cuts off. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. He knows that staying where he's disrespected is the fastest way to forget who he really is. And the masculine man? He never forgets. He never allows a cheap moment of disrespect to dilute the years of discipline it took to build his mindset. When people treat you poorly, they're teaching you what they think of you. And if you stay, you teach them that their low opinion was correct. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you lower your value in their eyes. But when you leave without a scene, when you disappear without seeking validation or revenge, you show them something they weren't prepared for: boundaries. And boundaries are terrifying to those who feed on control. You see, dark psychology has always told us one thing: people crave power over others, especially over those they sense they can manipulate emotionally. So when you stop reacting, when you no longer respond to bait or guilt or passive aggression, they lose that power. And once they lose it, they panic. That's when they chase. That's when they start to question what they thought they had figured out. Because you just shattered the script. You became unpredictable. And that, right there, is the masculine advantage. Predictability is weakness. When people know they can push your buttons, they will. But when they see that you are unmoved, when your silence becomes your sword, they lose their grip. The power dynamic shifts. You're no longer the one trying to prove anything. You're the one who's already decided, if you cannot value me, you will not have access to me. The Stoics were masters of this psychological detachment. They trained their minds to remain still in the face of insult, calm in the face of betrayal, and unshaken by the chaos around them. Marcus Aurelius didn't respond to rumors. He didn't defend his name to every critic. He ruled his kingdom the way a man should rule his life, with discipline, grace, and quiet certainty. That's the energy of the masculine man. Not emotional outbursts, not chasing ghosts, just presence or total absence, nothing in between. Let me make something clear. Disappearing doesn't mean running. It means rising. It means refusing to sit at a table where respect is no longer being served. It means understanding that not everyone deserves access to you, no matter how long they've had it. And walking away doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself not to stay where you're slowly being drained. So if someone ever tells you that you're too cold or too distant because you chose to leave after being disrespected, smile. Let them talk. Let them write their own narrative. But never rewrite your code. You are not responsible for making others comfortable at the expense of your standards. That's not masculinity. That's self-betrayal. And if you feel this deep in your bones, if you're building the kind of presence that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't explain, then mark your territory in the comments below. Type it, mean it, live it. If you can't respect me, you can't reach me. Say it with the conviction of a man who's done shrinking, a man who disappears, not to prove a point, but to protect his peace. Number 8. The masculine man doesn't disappear because he's afraid of conflict. He disappears because he doesn't need it. He doesn't need to win arguments. He doesn't need to prove his point. He doesn't stay up at night trying to get closure from people who casually disrespected him. Why? Because he's mastered the rarest art in a chaotic world, the ability to walk away from what weakens him without a second thought. Understand this. Walking away doesn't mean you're bitter. It means you're healed. It means you value your inner world more than temporary attachments. It means that instead of trying to teach others how to treat you, you show them through your absence what happens when they fail. And that, my friend, is not weakness. That is power. In dark psychology, there's a tactic called disruptive detachment. It's when you remove yourself so cleanly, so suddenly, that it leaves a psychological vacuum in the minds of those who underestimated you. They expected a reaction. They expected a fight. They expected desperation. But what they got instead was nothing. And nothing is terrifying. Because the mind can't process silence when it was expecting noise. It loops. It questions. It regrets. But the masculine man, he's long gone by then. Not physically far, but emotionally untouchable. He's already redirected his energy toward his mission, his growth, his vision. He doesn't sit around hoping someone regrets losing him. He's too busy becoming the version of himself that no one will ever get to disrespect again. And here's the part that hits the hardest. People don't learn from your presence. They learn from your absence. They don't understand your worth when you're always there. They understand it when you're gone, when your silence replaces your support, when your distance replaces your effort. That's when the realization hits. That's when they begin to feel the impact of what they thought they could play with. But by then, it's too late. Because the masculine man doesn't return to disrespect. He doesn't circle back to broken trust. He doesn't reopen doors that were slammed with ego. He disappears, and he means it. Because when he walks away, it's not a tactic. It's a standard. It's a philosophy. It's who he is. The Stoics were never concerned with winning people over. They were concerned with ruling over themselves. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." And there is no braver act in today's emotionally needy world than to walk away and never look back. That is freedom. That is bravery. That is masculinity. You don't need to scream to be powerful. You don't need to beg to be seen. The man who learns to disappear without anger, without revenge, without words, becomes a man no one forgets. Because his silence is not empty. It's calculated. It's heavy. It leaves a mark deeper than any insult ever could. So if you've ever had to walk away from someone you cared about, if you stayed silent while your soul screamed for recognition, if you vanished not because you wanted to, but because you refused to stay where you were shrinking, then understand this. You are not alone. You are one of the few, one of the men who choose honor over comfort, dignity over approval, peace over presence. And if you feel this, if this message is not just words, but a reflection of your journey, write this down in the comments right now. My silence is my legacy. I leave without a sound, but never without impact. Let them remember your absence. Let them regret their carelessness, but never let them hold the power to call you back. In the end, it all comes down to this. Respect is not requested, it is required. And when it's denied, the masculine man doesn't plead, doesn't protest. He disappears, quietly, permanently, because his energy is sacred, his presence is earned, and his peace, non-negotiable. You weren't born to chase people who never saw your worth. You weren't made to beg for love disguised as manipulation. You were built to lead yourself, to protect your focus, to embody that rare energy that doesn't need noise to be felt. Only men who've conquered themselves can walk away in silence and still leave the loudest echo in the room. So let this be your reminder. Never chase what's walking away from your value. Never stay where your worth is questioned. Walk with conviction, disappear with dignity, and let them feel what they lost in your absence. If this message hit home, if you're done explaining yourself and you're finally stepping into that higher, calmer version of you, then drop this one final phrase in the comments below. I disappear when respect ends. No warnings, no return. And if you're building yourself into that kind of man, like this video, subscribe to Stoic Mate, and turn on notifications, because this is where silent power becomes your lifestyle.